All right, hello everyone. For this week, this is week 5 now, we're getting ourselves into value scales. Now, we've already dealt with value a number of times throughout this class, so it should be no big surprise for you. If you have a pencil set, remember that your pencil set is basically doing the work for you. It really helps helps you out. If you're going to stick with Vine Charcoal, which you can, it's much more about how much you apply, right? So if I do a little bit, and kind of smudge it out. Obviously I have a lighter value. Value is just like saying how much shading it has, right? How much, how dark it is versus how light it is. And I would just add more and more and more, and it will progressively get darker and darker the more I apply. Think about it almost like staining the paper, if you want to think about it that way. Kind of like if you ever used watercolor. Watercolor, you're kind of staining the paper as opposed to acrylic paint where you're painting on top of paper or canvas. So anyway, these are our pencils, and they are going to really help us create a value scale. Now, here's the way to look at it. Remember that your B pencils, they are bold, they are soft, they are chalky. Your H pencils are hard, they're dense, there's less graphite and more clay and more other materials inside the actual pencil lead there. Not that it's actually lead, they haven't had lead in pencils for forever. Anyway, so what's nice is you can actually start with your hardest pencil and literally walk your way down every single pencil, and it will get progressively darker and darker. So it does the work for you. However, let's say that you're in a situation where you can't, right? Let's say that you don't have your pencil set, and let's say instead you're stuck with just one piece of charcoal. Now you can do this, of course, with a pencil set. You can just grab one pencil if you wanted to, or you are welcome to use every single pencil in your set. It's all the same. I'm going to show you the hard way, and that way you know all the ins and outs. So making a normal, everyday, kind of just plain old value scale. If you've ever had an art class, you probably have done this before. A simple way to think about working on your value scale would be to just start something very basic. I'm just going to do like a little rectangle here, right? Now, a normal value scale usually has about, give or take about 10 values. I'm going to do a simplified version. We're just going to do 5 today. You're welcome to do as many as you want to. Anything more than 10, and I don't know if you're really going to tell a difference between 1, 2, and 3, right? They're all going to kind of blend together. But let's do 5. So we're going to go ahead and divide this up real quick. Okay, there's 5 squares. Now, because this is Vine Charcoal and I can smudge it, we're going to use that to my advantage. If you were using pencils or even say a pen, right, you could do what's called cross hatching, where you kind of cross, right, we've done hatching before, kind of go in one direction, and then you do another direction, and then you do another direction. You see where this is going, and the more you apply, the darker it becomes, right? With a pencil, you can obviously smudge that a little bit. With Vine Charcoal, we can smudge it a lot. So let's go ahead and do just that. Let's zoom in just a hair here. There we are. And so what I'm going to do is this. I'm just going to use the side of my charcoal, right? I'm just going to make a big, long smudge here. And I am coloring in, or I'm adding value to the entire block. Okay? Now, sometimes you may want to choose to work from the middle out and erase some. You can do that too. I'm going to work from the top down. Yes, technically the first square should have nothing in it. It should be pure white. However, I just don't believe in that. I think that everything has some level of gray to it. Everything, even the paper, is white, but light reflecting off of it. It has some shadow. So I'm going to leave a little smudge right there, just kind of showcasing. So there's our number 1 ready to go. Now I'm going to go back and I'm just going to apply a little bit more. All the way down. Same pressure, I'm not pushing any harder. And let's smudge it out. I'm going outside the lines of my boxes and I'm not too worried about it. So you should see a nice little difference there. Not dramatic, right? But a little bit more. And we're just going to repeat this process again. Again, same level of pressure all the way across. Now you might say, why not just do 1 square at a time, right? That would be the logical thing to do. Me personally, I like working straight across. It really helps keep things uniform, in my opinion, rather than just getting over here and like coloring as hard as I possibly can. I just don't think that's beneficial. I like, kind of seeing the gradient develop like a photograph, right? It kind of develops. Well, photos are digital now. No one's developing photos, but you get the idea. Same level of pressure, and really that's the key. You can see, look, I pushed too hard during our last demo. That's my little candle right there. And I'm just applying more. I'm gonna make it a little bit darker, I think. Same level of pressure. And that's important, right? I don't want to just magically start pushing harder in one spot or another. That's no good. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we get down to 5. Now I'm pushing pretty hard for number 5. Now, if you want to start splitting hairs a little bit, clearly this is not the darkest that I can go, right? So it's not really that good of a value scale, but it does get the idea across that each one of these progressively gets darker. Now this is probably more of a medium gray. If I was going to keep going, I would eventually get down to that, which is obviously much, much darker, right? And I'd go from my medium gray and adding more and more and more and pushing harder and harder and harder. Eventually, you can just do this kind of in one stroke. You want to be able to kind of start light and progressively push harder and harder, and that's going to help slowly but surely kind of build your sense of kind of line control, right? So I can push harder as I go along. I can push lighter where I need to. So all of this is to say, kind of gearing your brain in place so that you understand the idea of kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the way down to 10. Now, almost kind of like a robot, if you can kind of lock these values in one at a time, right? If you can lock these in one at a time, then we can use this almost like a computer, right? Kind of color dropper. I can kind of take number 3 and plunk it onto my picture, and take number 4 and plunk it on there, and I can start kind of adding these values in their correct place. So let's do a little quick example here. So in your sketchbook, it talks about making, a sphere, right? How do you shade a sphere? So let's do that. Okay, again, I'm going to stick with my charcoal for today. You are welcome to use pencils, that's fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and just sketch out a little circle. All this is going to get smudged away, so I'm not too worried about perfection. And let's assume that my light source is kind of top left there, so I know that I'm going to have like a hot spot right there. And because this is a sphere, right, it's not going to cut straight across. We're going to go with the contour, so it's going to wrap around and around and around my sphere, making little stripes kind of around my sphere. And then, of course, I'll get a little cast shadow. Let's say there's the table. Okay, so you can kind of see it floating in there, but of course, without any value, without any shadow and shade or highlight, we're running into, it looks very flat and two-dimensional, doesn't look all that dynamic. So we want to add some value. So value is literally just dark to light, light to dark. We can also refer to what we're about to do here as the term chiaroscuro, which looks like a Japanese word, but it's actually an Italian word, and it literally translates to light and dark, or the play of light and dark. So you can't have one without the other, right? Darth Vader's only so cool, but whenever you add Luke Skywalker into it, now we've got a game, right? You need the light side and the dark side working together. So for me, I'm now going to go in reverse order. Before we were going light to dark, let's go dark to light. Why not? Doesn't really matter. I won't lie to you. I actually find it's much easier working light to dark. I find it's easier to add. That's me personally. But I want you to realize that you can go in both directions. So because this is the cast shadow, obviously it's going to be very, very dark. Now some ambient light will come around, so eventually this will start to kind of fade out a little bit. Just right around the edges, it'll kind of soften. Just like so. The darkest part of our magical, invented imagination sphere here is actually this little crescent right here. This area is going to be the absolute darkest. It is the part of the sphere that is getting zero light, other than maybe some reflected light. But almost no light right there. Very, very dark. And then we're just going to push a little bit softer here. Kind of using the tip of my charcoal. I could probably use the side. That'd be easier. Sorry for the wiggle on the camera there. I'm just going to smudge this around, almost like paint, kind of pushing it on my canvas. Okay, kind of push it around there. I'm going to apply more in the dark area, because that can go as dark as it wants to, right? I'm going to push it around. I'm using my finger. You could use a paper towel if you wanted to, or really anything. Your drawing kit maybe came with a little tiny rolled up piece of paper. You can use that as well. That's called a tortillon. And that is nice to use if you're doing like detail with your shadow and shading. So again, applying in the dark area, just kind of smudging it around. And now I'm still thinking about 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I'm thinking about those bands. I'm trying to relate them to maybe like a 10 and a 5 and a 3, right? I'm plunking these numbers in as I go along. Okay. Just smudge that out. Just like so. Okay. Let's grab our eraser. Let's go ahead and give it a nice little hot spot here. A little bright highlight. Ooh, just like so. And again, if you have a clean finger, you can kind of go in reverse. Right? I can take my eraser and kind of smudge things out a little bit. So I'm pulling in, I'm pulling out, back, forth, back, forth. More charcoal, less charcoal. And again, pencils work exactly the same way, just like so. So now we've got a nice kind of gradient here, very, very soft. If you're working with pencils, you might see your pencil lines, and that's okay. Try to use the side of your pencil, more so than the tip of your pencil. Now I can start thinking about kind of the background a little bit, and we talked about this once before. What if I put a little bit darkness here in the background? That's going to make that highlight really pop. Again, this is just negative space, right? We've dealt with negative space before. Look at that. How quickly that makes that really pop, doesn't it? Bring that around town here. Around town. A little bit here. You even see a little hint of highlight on that side. It's called rim lighting, where the light kind of just kind of creeps around the side there. Edge of the table right there. Just blend that out. Look at that. Looking pretty sharp. Now I could obviously add a little bit of value to the table as well. That's got something going on. Let's just smudge this all around town. Bring it here, bring it there, bring it everywhere. And you might find, especially if you're working with charcoal, it's easy to overblend. I'm going to do that right here, right now on purpose. So it's easy to overblend and kind of lose all that detail. I worked so hard on it. Let's put it back in. Don't be afraid to push down a little bit harder. Remember that with charcoal, you can always add or spray a little bit of fixative or even hairspray over top, and that will help keep all that stuff in place. I don't have any hairspray around. If you guys have seen photos of me, I am very bald and don't have much need for hairspray. Okay, let's put that cast shadow back on there. I go a little bit smaller and kind of let it fade out. Look at that. Nice and dark. Just like that. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Well, hopefully that helps you kind of think a little bit differently in values, because remember that I can still go back and I can still see, right? There's a 1. There's like a, what do you think, a 2 or a 3? 4 or 5 is in there somewhere. And we've got kind of down here, that's like a 7 and a 10. So I'm thinking about that play. I'm thinking about chiaroscuro, the play of light into dark, right? All right, now for your actual project, this is all sketchbook stuff, right? For your actual assignment this week, okay, you're gonna go ahead and work with a small still life and really focus on not just your composition, not just how your objects are laid out, but this week you are focusing doubly on your values, right? So we're not doing contours anymore. I don't expect you to be drawing out, grids or lines or anything like that. However, you can still use this and think about where your shading is going to be. It's going to help you see some of those things, right? If this was gridded, it would help us see, almost like a globe or a basketball, right? It would help us see very quickly. This is going to be the darkest, and a little bit lighter, darker, darker, lighter, lighter, right? So that kind of helps sometimes if you're having a hard time. Maybe start with kind of a gridded sphere and then smudge it out. That could be good. But what we're looking for, I'm going to read right from the computer here. So you're going to set up a still life, and we want to use a dramatic lighting. I'm going to give you an example here in a second. You really want to focus on that dramatic lighting. Where's the dark? Where's the highlight? We want to turn up the contrast. Contrast is the difference between light and dark. So in this case, if I wanted a heavier contrast, I would really push that high intensity dark with a really lighter side there. I wouldn't have this soft transition. It would be a very hard transition. After I've gone through and started to, after you've gone through, excuse me, and started to draw those up, make sure to think about everything we've talked about so far, the size and relationship of different objects, the perspective, and all these different elements together. Now, you obviously want to maybe see an example of the differences in lighting. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna just pull us up real quick here. Let's get this, or use this as our backdrop. Now, as we've talked about before, I've got a whole bunch of weird little objects here off on the side. That's a brass monkey right there. Just weird little stuff, but I've got a nice flashlight as well. And right here is a ceramic pagoda that I actually made many years ago for a high school class as like a demonstration that we were talking about how to make or how to work with clay. And then we fired this in an open fire. So that's what all this cool kind of charred look. It was in just like a giant ball of flames. It was really neat. So right now I have light coming from this direction over here. That's just a lamp. So I'm going to turn it off real quick. There we go. Now you can barely see anything. So a direct light would be something like this, right? Really intense, very bright, and very directional, right? Very bright up front, next to nothing behind it. So what does this look like? Look at the mood. It's like whenever you're in a Halloween, you know, if you're telling a haunted story, right? You put the around the campfire, right? If you're telling a scary story, you put the light underneath your chin to give it a really creepy mood, right? Look at the intense brightness that I can get depending on where I move this light. This is a much more dynamic and therefore probably a little bit more fun to draw picture, or if I was drawing this pagoda, way more intense like this, as opposed to old Boringsville right there, right? Everything's well lit, everything's easy to see, and it's kind of boring, right? It's drab, right? Even with the intense light here, it's only so cool, right? It's just, it doesn't have that punch, right? But when you really crank up the contrast, woohoo, now we're talking. That is intense. And this is the kind of stuff we're going for. So whatever you're doing in your still life, set up just somewhere in the corner of your house, a little backdrop or something. Take an old trash bag if you want like a solid black background. Put a couple little objects there. Not many, just a couple, and then get one direct light. You could just take a lamp and maybe take the lampshade off, or get a big floodlight or something like that, and just set it up and draw what you see, right? This heavy shadow. Look at how like these shadows underneath here. This whole side can be a 10, right? I could really color this in heavy, and then over here I can grab my eraser and really lighten that up, really bright, right? That's what we're going for. Intense contrast. Okay? All right, well, hopefully, guys, this has helped you out a little bit there. As you guys have questions, please make sure, as always, reach out to me. Let me help you. I am genuinely happy, as always, to assist you, and I'm more than happy to send an individual video if you feel like there's something in particular that you're struggling with. All right, be well, everyone. I will talk to you soon. Bye.